Hey everybody again, guess who? Batman Bruce Moyer here. Today, I'm going to go over the exclusive buyer agency agreement, the brand new one that was just released in October 2024. It is only 3 pages, and I'm ecstatic and excited to share it with you. I'm going to do just like I did the other form. I'm going to present it and just put it up on the computer screen for you in a share. And then what I'm going to do is read over it line item by line item with you and help you to complete it. So um, here we go. Exclusive buyer agency agreement. It should be large enough for you to see on your screen as well. And I want to say this to you. Congratulations for watching this and watching it so early. This form is very simple to go through. I won't spend too much time, but we're going to go through it pretty rapidly. The agreement is between the buyer's full legal name. If you have 2 buyers, please use both buyers. Or if you have 3, 4, 5, 6 buyers, please use all buyers. Get my drift? Full legal name of every buyer that you're representing. And then our firm, Paula Alban Realtors, and please use it appropriately. Paula Alban, P and the A are capitalized, nothing else, comma. Realtors is all capitalized, followed by the trademark R. Appreciate very much to your attention to detail. Services provided. It says the firm will assist the buyer in locating and buying the following property. Describe type and location. You can see, just like on the other form, Form 202, the exclusive buyer agency agreement is going to go backwards into that same style of description. So describe the type. It's going to be residential, commercial, industrial, agricultural, whatever type it is, and then the general location. So like general location would be Charlotte, Mecklenburg County, Waxhaw, Union County, Raleigh, Wake County, whichever it is that wherever they're wanting to see property, just do a general thing. And then it says the services that our services provided is going to help them find it. So while providing the services, the firm will represent the buyer as buyer's exclusive agent. Now that's where it's key. See, it says exclusive buyer agency agreement up at the top. So this is an exclusive agency agreement here. It means that it's exclusive. It's between you and the buyer themselves and the firm. Buyer agrees to cooperate with the firm and also agrees that all offers, contracts, negotiations, leads, inspections, appointments, and any other activities in connection with buying the property will be facilitated by and through the firm only. Okay, that's pretty explicit. Tells the buyer exactly that we are supposed to be the people that present the offers and that we do all the other stuff with it as well. Firm may assign other agents in the firm to provide the services at any time. So if somebody doesn't like you, I, the BIC, can go ahead and assign it to somebody else who might get along better with them. It's not a dig at you. It's just that some people are match for us and some people aren't. Totally, it's fine with me. I know some people are going to be okay with me and some people won't be. I'm okay to share it with somebody else. The firm may assign other agents, so we can do that. Even though the firm will act in the best interest of the buyer understands that the firm may represent other buyers who may be shown the same property as the buyer. Oh, you mean since there's 21 of us that maybe 10 of us could show one property to all 10 buyers? Sure. One of us will win, but not all of us. Just one of us will win. Another one might win by becoming a backup contract. Please, please, if you're taking listings, please remember backup contracts are wonderful to have and they do the best for the seller. So I highly encourage you to enter into backup contracts with the sellers if they will allow us to. Buyer disclosures. Buyer makes the following disclosures and agrees to update them immediately if any changes occur. A, buyer has or has not signed a document with another real estate agent or firm. This should be a trigger memory. Trying to remind them. If buyer has signed a document with another agent, for example, a document signed in order to tour a property, in order to tour, that would be the property showing agreement. Buyer agrees to give firm the agent's contact information so that the firm can confirm its ability to provide the services to the buyer. That's pretty detailed, and I love it because it's telling the buyer, tell us who you signed it with so we can contact them and see if we can still help you. The same language that they have in the showing agreement. Or B, buyer is or is not working with a relocation company. So first of all, answer A, buyer has or has not signed. Hopefully there's a has not. Select has not in A. And B, are they or are they not working with a relocation company? If they are, select the is. If they're not, it's the is not. And then C, the buyer has or has not received sample copies of the purchase contract and professional services disclosure form. So now we have to provide the offer to purchase and contract, standard form 2T, blank, written with sample on the behind of it, and then the professional services disclosure, also written with sample across it, to the buyer clients before entering into the exclusive buyer agency agreement with them. So hopefully you're able to select on two has not signed a document, or if they have, they're going to tell you who it was with. B, they're not working with a relocation company, or if they are, we're going to know now. And C, they have received these copies, or you haven't done it yet. So my point to this is these are the warnings that we're giving to clients. These are things that they should know prior to entering into the exclusive buyer agency agreement. That's why they're here. They're here to remind us we've got to ask these specific questions and get more information if the answer is yes. Term of the agreement. Number 3. The agreement, remember, any agency agreement must have a beginning date and an end date. So this one's going to start on the time when the buyer and the firm sign. Oh, so if we're doing it right now and you're my buyer client and you sign right now on October 24th at 11:28 a.m., that's when it would begin. And it will end when the property, as described above, is entered into contract. Let me say that. Say it better. Let's do term of the agreement better. Term of the agreement is effective when the buyer and the firm both sign and make this agreement active. It will end when the buyer purchases property, as described up in section 1, at midnight. That's described here, at midnight on whatever day we want to put here, or whichever occurs first. So if we put here November 5th, we know that's less than 2 weeks to settle on something. So that would be, this agency agreement would be over in 2 weeks. If there is a successful completion or successful transfer of property during that time period, an agency agreement is okay. If we go beyond the agency agreement, that time period, if we state November 5th and it goes to, say, November 30th, do we need to do an amendment to the agreement? Yes, you absolutely do, because your agreement has ended, but the transaction has not yet settled. So you want representation at all times. You'd want to do an amendment to it just to extend it further. Or, well, if you buy the property before, and let's say this buyer agency agreement is to help them buy their primary residence in Raleigh, and it's going to be done for up until November 5th. They don't settle until November 30th. Or no, if they do settle before November 5th, there you go, before November 5th. If they settle before November 5th, the agency agreement is terminated because they've settled. The act that actually ends all agency agreements in the state of North Carolina is the act when the buyer and the seller have both signed the closing disclosures. Once the closing disclosures are signed, most agency agreements terminate, unless they have them for a long-term agency agreement. You can tell this one is written so that it's meant for a shorter period of time. However, we can enter into agency agreements however length of time we need. So what you've learned from us before about a long-term or short-term agency agreement, it's still viable even in this agreement. Just to clarify that for you, you can still do a 10-year or 20-year agency agreement here. Fee for services. Buyer agrees to pay the firm. Check all that apply. Now I like that. Check all that apply. I'm going to check all 4 of them. No, typically I'm not. The first one, a non-refundable retainer of, and there's a specific dollar amount. There's a dollar sign, and it wants the amount of money: $100, $500, $750, $1,000, $1,500. You get my point? It can go anywhere. It can up to be $10,000 if you choose to, whichever will be credited towards firm's total compensation. It's going to be credited towards the compensation. It's not in place of it. It's credited towards it. That means we can pay you commissions. That's why it has to be worded that way. And then the second one is a blank % of the gross sales price. It's already pre-printed for you. Yay! Most of you like to put in your percents right there, and I put so many comments on your agency agreement that says, of what amount? When you just write 3% or 2% of something, you don't finish it off. And here we finished it for you. Isn't that wonderful? So Bruce, less anxiety with Bruce. 3, a flat fee of, and so we put one specific dollar amount, $10,000, $15,000, whichever you choose to do with the client, and then the other specific amount. Now this other specific amount, that's pretty broad. So I wouldn't be writing anything in here unless you want to include something like a cancellation fee, an administration fee, something like those lines. And if you want to do that, just select the other specific amount, be very specific and detailed. Cancellation fee, that's specific. A retainer, not a retainer fee, but I just gave you a second one. An early termination fee, a cancellation fee. I wouldn't call it cancellation. I'd say early termination fee. And then just anything you charge. A, B, and C, and D. It's all about this fee for services. So these have to be covered with the client. Fee is earned, due, and payable. We earn our fee when we bring a ready, willing, and able buyer to a seller. This is the buyer. So when do we earn our money with them? Well, we earn their money with them when the firm enters into a written contract during the term of this agreement. All right, so these are specific words. Contract referring to the offer to purchase and contract, and this agreement being an agency agreement to buy real property as described in section 1. The fee will be due and payable to the firm when the buyer and any authorized assignee of the buyer or any party authorized by buyer in the contract closes or defaults on the contract. So whether they closed on the contract or whether they breached the contract, doesn't matter. We've still earned our fee. Seller or listing firm assistance. Firm may seek compensation from the seller or the listing firm to pay some or all of the fee due in the agreement. However, buyer understands that neither a seller nor a listing firm has a duty to pay the firm's fee. I would underline that and highlight that if I were you, because that's my reference to the seller, to the buyer. If the seller doesn't pay and if the listing firm doesn't pay, you're going to have to pay. That's what that's saying. Mutual termination required. If the buyer hires another buyer agent or firm while this agreement is in effect, buyer will remain liable to pay for any earned fee in the section that becomes due and payable unless the firm and the buyer both agree to terminate the agreement. That's pretty self-explanatory. Both of us have to agree, the firm. Now, can you make a decision for the firm? No. Paula Albin and Bruce Moyer can. That's it. So me and Paula, we're the only two who can give you a mutual termination. We answer for the firm, okay? You enter into it. We make the decisions on behalf of the firm. Protection period D. If the buyer enters into a contract within, please insert 180 days. I want 6 months protection with this. 180 days after this agreement expires for a property introduced to the buyer by the firm, then the fee in this section 4 will be deemed earned unless the buyer has entered into another agency agreement with another real estate agent or firm. Any fee earned during the protection period will be due and payable as provided in the section of the agreement. This is verbatim right as to what they had before. It's completely fine. 5, negotiable fee and additional compensation. This goes through and says, buyer understands that the amount, the format, or the rate of real estate compensation is not fixed by law, but it is set by each broker or firm individually and is fully negotiable. That's pretty self-explanatory. So you're going to have people that they're going to be asking you to do certain things, and I absolutely know that. I absolutely know that they will. Please make certain that people are aware of this. Buyer agency compensation has to come now from a buyer or from the seller. Some lenders will allow you to negotiate it as part of the buyer settlement cost. Some lenders won't. So you have to be very specific to who is the buyer using through their lender and ask some questions. Any additional compensation is offered to the firm from any other party or person and related to the services, and the additional compensation exceeds what the buyer has agreed to pay herein, firm cannot be paid the additional compensation unless the buyer agrees to amend this agreement. Oh. Buyer has no obligation to agree to additional compensation. So let's say that we short sell ourselves. And let's say that we came up here in number 3 and we put in right here, this little box here, 2% of the gross sales price. Now, if we limit it because the buyer doesn't want to be obligated to pay anything and they don't want us to charge a full service fee of 3%, that's what we do as a firm. We charge 3% for full services. We negotiate down to something lower. Yet later on in the transaction, you learn that the seller is willing to make up the difference between the 2% and the 3%. So the seller will pay the 1%. Huh. Can't take it because the buyer has not agreed to pay it. So think before you fill this in. Now, the buyer has the opportunity to tell us how much we can earn and how much we can't earn. Just note it to yourself. You know how to earn. You know what you're worth. Your worth is very good. Talk to people about your worth. Let them know what you're worth. Get used to it. We all have to. Dual agency. Now, this is a very quick synopsis, but I will review it real quickly. It's a little bit new language that they're doing here. Not new language, but new way of saying it. Dual agency occurs, excuse me, when a real estate firm represents both the buyer and the seller in a transaction. Designated agency is a specific type of dual agency where a firm will appoint one agent to represent only the interest of the seller and a different agent to represent only the interests of the buyer. Designated agency permits a firm to fully advise and advocate for both buyer and seller as if appointed agents were not both affiliated with the same firm. Not every real estate firm offers dual agency or designated dual agency. Authorizations available below may vary. And then it talks about some terms of agency and the authorizations. So terms of the dual agency, just go into the details of it. So I'll review these with you. We offer all forms of agency agreements here in Paula Auburn Realtors: single, dual, designated dual, as well as unrepresented. We will offer all four. Firm, if dual agency is permitted, the buyer understands and agrees to the following. Firm will act as the buyer's exclusive agent up until dual agency occurs. However, in its separate representation of the buyer and a seller, the firm may obtain information which, if disclosed, could harm the buyer's bargaining position. You're right. In dual agency, you must keep everything confidential from one client to the other client. Buyer will have to make their own decisions as to what terms will be included in an offer to purchase unless designated dual agency is directed by the buyer below. So we're going to get the authorizations later. This is for warning the buyer. If you want me to help you with what specifically to present in the offer, you at least need to agree to designated dual agency. At minimum, dual agency would be best because then the agent and the firm can represent both parties. Designated dual agency, only one firm, two separate individuals representing the clients. One separate for the buyer, one separate for the seller. It's designated dual. Unless required by law, firm will not disclose to a seller that the buyer may agree to a price or contract terms different than what the buyer has offered. We will not disclose the buyer's motivation for wanting to buy a property and any other information that the buyer has told the firm is confidential. Firm will similarly not reveal to the buyer the same kind of information as it relates to the seller. So has anything changed with our fiduciary duties? Nothing. Nothing at all. Old car is still in place. We owe all of our obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting of reasonable skill, accounting of all funds in the transaction, and our reasonable skill, care, and diligence during the transaction. We owe all of that to our client. Firm will represent the buyer and the seller in a balanced and fair manner, and the firm will assist both parties in their communications regarding the transaction. You see that? They will assist both parties in their communications regarding the transactions. You answer your phone. You can communicate to the other party what your party's wanting to say, and back and forth. Communication is instrumentally key when it comes to agency in North Carolina. However, firm will be limited in its ability to advocate for the buyer like an exclusive agent would unless designated dual agency is directed below. Again, kind of giving them the kind of lead. If designated dual agency is directed, an agent in the firm will not be designated to represent the buyer or the seller if that agent has received confidential information concerning the other party. You can't be designated dual agent if you know any information about either agent. And then last point here is buyer has determined that the advantages of dual agency outweigh the disadvantages. Wow. The buyer determines that the advantages of dual agency outweigh the disadvantages. Yeah, it does. Dual agency only limits you as an agent through the negotiation process. A lot of clients don't need our skills in negotiations much anymore, but when they do, if you're in a dual agency or designated dual agency, you have to be very careful. Dual agency limits the ability for you to help to negotiate on your client's behalf. Now, I'm not saying you can't present the negotiation. It's just you can't advise them to what to put on the offer during the presentation of the preparation of the offer. That's all. B, authorizations. Initial only as applicable below. And these are very familiar to what you had before. Firm may not act as a dual agent in the transaction involving the buyer. If firm may not act as a dual agent, then the buyer will always have exclusive representation under this agreement. Exclusive meaning exclusively represented of the client, nobody else. If the firm may act as a dual agent, then select one of these two. Buyer authorizes the same agent to represent both the buyer and the seller in dual agency, or buyer directs the firm to practice designated dual agency. So they have to consent to dual first, and then they have to indicate designated dual agency. If the buyer directs firm to practice designated dual agency, then the firm may only practice designated dual agency unless it is not allowed under North Carolina law. Well, it is allowed under North Carolina law, so we can do this. Material facts. Regardless of whether dual agency is authorized, the firm must disclose any material facts to all parties in a transaction. There's 4 kinds of material facts. This duty applies whether the firm is buyer's exclusive agent or dual agent, including designated dual agency, which means in all agency relationships, all material facts must be disclosed by the agent, not necessarily by the seller or the buyer, but must be disclosed by the agent that knows them. If you know a material fact about a property itself, about the buyer or the seller's ability to perform a transaction, about the area around the property itself. So the surrounding area of a neighborhood or surrounding area of whatever they're purchasing. And if they say that something is really, really important to them. Those are the 4 kinds of material facts. So I like to use the example, if you've got 4 Great Danes and you need a 10-foot fence in the backyard, well, you need to be reading the CC&Rs to see for that client that you're showing the potential buyer of, can we build can the client build a very tall fence backyard? Now, if they can build a 10-foot or 12-foot fence in the backyard, that would be pretty important if I have 4 Great Danes, because they're going to jump. And if they're going to jump, I want to keep them in the yard. So I got to have something tall. So if I have something, that's a scenario. That's a specific request of a potential buyer that would make it a material fact for you. So those things we have to tell to even to the other party. So that's a review of material facts quickly. Waiver. Should the firm become a dual agent, buyer waives all claims, damages, losses, expenses, and liabilities other than for violations of the North Carolina real estate law and intentional wrongful acts arising from the firm's role as dual agent. Now, that's a waiver. That's a waiver. Should firm become a dual agent, buyer waives all claims. Isn't that great? That just saves the firm, you guys. It saves the firm. Surveillance, photographs, and video. You're used to this as well. Buyer understands that some properties may have video and audio or surveillance devices, even though it's unlawful. Federal and state laws prohibit the recording of oral communications without consent. Now, yeah, I made that blank statement, didn't I? Recording is very specific, what is allowed, what is not allowed. In the state of North Carolina, you are allowed to record what's going to go into it. However, video surveillance without consent may be permitted. Without consent may be permitted. So if you're walking through somebody's house and the buyer wants you to video record the showing for them, virtual tour, you're doing that. So as long as the buyer understands you're not going to be opening up any drawers, you're not going to be opening up medicine cabinets, you're not going to be opening up the refrigerator. That's all personal stuff, you guys. Leave those doors closed. Leave the doors closed and shoot a video. Buyer may take photos or record video as long as buyer does not intrude on the owner's reasonable expectation of privacy and that the owner has not prohibited photography and video. Buyer should only record spaces in plain view. Don't open doors. If the buyer were to intrude on an owner's privacy, for example, if buyer were to take pictures of a medicine cabinet or inside a desk drawer, then the buyer may be subject to liability, which means liability of what happens if those things are now missing. Firm may not have control of pictures or videos of a property that the buyer may purchase, and accordingly, such information will not be removed from public display after buyer's purchase, which means if you're posting them someplace, you don't have to take them down after the buyer buys. Other professional advice. Buyers advised to seek other professional advice regarding laws, taxes, financing, insurance, surveying, wood destroying insects, structural soundness, engineering, building. You getting the point? They are encouraged to use other professionals in other categories where we are not appropriate. Firm may provide recommendations for these services, but the firm cannot guarantee the quality of the level or expertise. Firm agrees to hold the firm harmless, buyer agrees to hold the firm harmless regarding buyer's use of other professional services. This is important for us to tell them. We're not obligated or we're not responsible for other people's services that we recommend unless we only give them 1 referral. If we give them 3 referrals and they select one of the 3, we're waived. We have no professional liability there to it. So this is stating that to them. Buyer also agrees to fully indemnify the firm if a claim is brought against the firm, stemming from the buyer's use of those other professionals. There's a typo right there. Stemming should be 1 word. So what that paragraph means is when we refer other people, as long as we give them 3 referrals, we're good, we're clear. Inspection cost. Unless otherwise agreed, buyer must pay for all inspection costs and other professional services related to purchasing a property, including all items in Section 8. Professional advice. This duty to pay will apply regardless of whether the buyer closes on a property. I'd highlight that one. The cost of deciding to purchase a home is going up. During the due diligence period, a buyer is allowed to incur any fee imaginable to determine whether they want to buy that house or not. And they are responsible for those fees to be paid, whether they purchase the property or not. We have to make that statement. We have to be telling people that. Whatever they spend, they're going to have to pay for. Number 10, confidentiality. Firm will not disclose the price or other terms of an offer by the buyer to a competing party without the express consent of the buyer. Express meaning oral or written. However, sellers may elect not to treat buyer's offers as confidential. They don't have to because they're the seller. Oh, wait, sellers can elect not to treat buyer's offers as confidential? Always been that way. Sellers may also elect not to disclose other offers and instruct their agent to keep that information confidential. The seller doesn't have to tell you that they're in multiple offers. The seller doesn't have to tell you that they have 18 offers. They can tell you that they only had one. Could they tell you that they've had no offers in 6 months? When's the last time you were told that? I think all of us have been told before. Oh, we got another offer coming in tomorrow, this morning, whatever, and we always are in doubt of it. I understand the doubt. I understand the doubt. I don't lie, but I know people do. So take it for what it is, confidentiality. Wire fraud warning. Hopefully all of us have our wire fraud warning at the bottom of our emails. This summarizes the same thing. Just telling people, do not follow directions by a firm or from a agent, telling them about it. Additional terms, number 12. This is where you can put in our sentences. If you buy or sell with me within 10 years, I give you 1% back. You can use a sentence that says, I agree to allow Paula Aubin Realtors to display a for sold by sign in the yard for 30 days after settlement. Anything that you want to come up with there, you may do so. If there's a conflict between the terms in the section and any other part of the agreement, the terms in this section will control. Firm and buyer may also insert see attached and add additional terms with a separate addendum, so long as you don't create the addendum. Okay? Addendums are lawful contracts, must be written by attorneys. But we can add the things that we need to add in here because we're party to it. So if you want to have something that's from Paula Aubin Realtors, please present that to me and to Paula, and we will consider getting something drafted for you. 13, merger, modification, assignment, enforcement, attorney fees, and governing laws. That's a lot. The agreement represents the entire agreement of the parties here too. So everything is there with it. Okay. Non-discrimination, again, the 7 protected classes, fresh corn, as we discussed prior. And then again, a CYA form. So you can see here, the buyer, same layout, buyer, name printed, sign, date. That's the effective date when it begins, right there. When that date comes and the buyer signs it, that's the beginning of the agency agreement. Contact is phone and email of the client, and then their mailing address. Buyer name 1, buyer name 2, and then the entity buyer if they want to use the entity to purchase the property. And then our firm, Paula Aubin Realtors, license number C39593, our phone number, 704-563-1919. Why is that number evading me today? 563-1919. Yep. And then our fax being down here on this one, agent contact. This is what I would like to do differently. This is the name of the firm, Paula Aubin Realtors, license number, then the agent signature. So I would put Bruce Moyer, my license number, and then the date. Our office address is 1816 Galleria Boulevard, Charlotte, North Carolina, Suite E, 28270. Agent contact, Bruce Moyer. Phone, 704-712-4564. Fax, 1-800-715-9623. And email, bruce@paulaaubinrealtors.net. Initial at the bottom of the page for the buyers and then for the agent. And that is the end of the buyer agency representation agreement now. The exclusive buyer agency agreement is now only 3 pages. 3 pages, ladies and gentlemen. So I hope you've enjoyed the video, and I'm sure we're gonna have lots more answers to your questions as we use this form more and more and more and more. Thanks for watching the video, and I've kept it as close as I could. Yep, I'm less than 45 minutes. Way to go. Perfect. 45 minutes on the exclusive buyer agency agreement. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Take care until then.